report planning. This is on page 4. From past experience, just sitting down to the computer without some type of a plan to get started, you're doomed for failure, because you don't know what this report, whoever is asked for it, they're not telling you how they want to use it and what they want on the report. So in your handout on page 4, I've broken it out a little bit further than what's on the screen in the PowerPoint. So the first thing there, purpose. Who or what is this report going to be used for? You need to have that as part of your plan. And then who needs it? So who's the audience for this report? One person may be asking for it, but there may be others within the company that are going to use it as well. So that those first two, the purpose of it and who's going to be using it, are important. And then from there, you're going to build something, and I've got actually, in the next few pages, I've got a sample of what you could use to draw this out before you sit down in the software. So I've broken it out into the 3 parts of the report. So first is header. So what do they want to see at the top? Meaning, what's the title to this report? Then in the body, what kind of information do they want to see in the body of the report when it prints? So are they looking for detail? Are they looking for summary lines? Have them or have you talk with them and draw out how they want that actually to look. And then footer, do they need something to print at the bottom of each page? Now, once you have that information, especially the body, then you can start determining which records you're going to need to get the information out for the report. So, and we're going to do a sample here in just a minute, and you'll understand that a little bit better. But as an example, if all they're asking for is information off the vendor master, name, address, phone number, then all you need is the vendor master, and you should write down the fields that you're going to actually need to do the report. Now, if this report uses multiple records, meaning I'm going to pull some information from the master file, but I'm also going to pull some information from the transaction file, you need to decide then between those 2 records, which one is going to be what we call the processing record or the driving record of the report, which means it controls how much information is going to print on this report. So as an example, we'll stick with AP. Maybe we've pulled the vendor master and the invoice transaction into the report design. If I go with invoice as the primary or driving record, which it will choose that, the system will choose whichever record has the most detail, and it assumes that's the one that you want. So it's going to pick invoice as my driving record. And that means that any vendor that does not have an invoice in the system yet will not show up on the report. No invoice, no vendor. Now, if I want to see all the vendors, regardless of whether they have invoices or not, then I need to change the driving record or the processing record to be vendor. Then it will print all my vendors along with invoices for each of the vendors that have them. So processing record is important because it determines which record is going to run this report when you print it. Sort order. Again, it's going to default to the primary key or sort order number 1 for the driving record. So whichever you choose as that driving record is going to determine the sort order. Now, when we get into the software, I'm going to show you how you can customize that sort order if you need it to print in a different way. Some additional other considerations, conditions. If we don't put any conditions on the report, then every single transaction or master file record is going to print on the report. Is that what you really want, or are you trying to condition it down? Maybe all you want to see are suppliers in AP, or maybe all you want are job numbers that are open. You don't want the closed jobs to print. So we can assign conditions to the report that will filter out the information that you want. Now, if you have planned this report out and you're looking through all the record types that you've selected, you printed out the data dictionary, and you don't see a field for something that you need in the report, we can create a formula for that. As long as we have all the pieces that we need to come up with the value, then we can create a formula. And we're gonna look at a simple formula today, but more advanced next week. And then any totals, if you want a report total, we need to assign that. If you need subtotals within the report, we can assign those as well. Okay, so on pages 5 and 6 in your handout, on page 5, I've given you a blank kind of a layout worksheet. And I've only given you 5 columns here, but you might want to recreate this for yourself and give yourself a few more, maybe do it on a landscape instead of portrait. But I've given you an area to write out the title, define what you want in columns 1 through 5, put headings headings across the top, and then draw out how you want that information to print. I've given you some lines where you can put dollar signs or values in, and then whether or not you want subtotals, and then whether you want a grand total. Once you have the top part of that filled out, then I've given you a space to write in the required records, what's going to be the driving record, the sort, the condition, formulas. We can also do page break and line spacing. So if you look at page 6, I have filled one out. So I'm looking at an open invoice register, and I've got descriptions there for columns 1 through 5 of invoice number, description, amount paid, and balance. I've also filled in that I want the vendor ID and their name, and then I want some address information to print. And then I've kind of given myself a sample here where I'm showing an invoice number, that's the 12345, the description, the amount, and the balance. And then I want it to total by vendor. I want a subtotal by vendor, and then I want a grand total at the bottom. So my required records are vendor and invoice. My driving record is going to be invoice. I don't want to see vendors that I haven't received an invoice from yet. My sort order, I'm going to sort this by vendor name, and then within each vendor name, I want it sorted by invoice number. For conditions, I only want subcontract vendors to print. The formula, we don't have a balance field inside the vendor or the invoice record. So we're going to create a formula that says take the invoice amount minus the amount paid. We have those two fields on the invoice record. And that formula will give us the balance. And then I'm going to tell it I want it to page break by vendor. So I want each vendor to have their own page, and I'm going to do single spacing. So now with this in front of me, I can sit down and at my computer and go into RD, and I can quickly design a report just off this single sheet of paper. I just want to point out the different types of formulas that we can pull into our design before we jump in the software. All right, so public formulas, these are the formulas that are created by you that can be used anywhere in the software. It doesn't have to be in the report design. Okay, so you might have created some stuff outside of RD, maybe in one of the applications. You have access to those public formulas inside Report Designer. That's different than an application formula. Application formulas are hard-coded. Sage maintains them. You cannot change them, but you can copy them to a new name in the public formula area, and then you can modify them. And again, they can be used wherever the software can use a formula. Now, the design formulas are the ones that we create inside of a report design, and we give it a name, and then it's used within that report design. These designs can also be copied out to the public formula. So if you have a formula in a report that you want to use in another report design or somewhere else in the software, pull that formula up inside the report design and copy it to a public formula, and then you'll be able to use it wherever else you need it. Lastly, we have something called quick formulas, and these, again, are created and stored within the design, but they're specific to a column within the design. You won't be able to give it a name, and you can't copy it or use it anywhere else other than where you've designed it right specifically in a column.